Welcome to the podcast again. I'm back here with Jake.
Hello, everyone.
And today we're talking about that amazing interview that Tadej Pogacar did with Dr. Peter Attia.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I was into that. Were you?
Yeah, I listened to it pretty much when it came out last night whilst I was fitting tyres in the garage. It was, it's well worth the listen.
It was a rare and fascinating glimpse into the training and the practices of the best rider in the world. Two World Tour wins this year. And Dr. Peter Attia did an excellent job, I think, of really extracting some fascinating.
Yeah.
But, elephant in the room, was it all a big fakie?
I hope not. He seems like a pretty genuine guy, to be honest. He comes across, in all the stuff he does, he seems quite nice. He seems quite genuine. I'd be surprised if it was all a hoax just to...
It's always the quiet ones.
To throw Vingegaard off the scent. But you never know. You never know.
You never know. I think there was definitely some bits in there when he was being a little bit coy.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, I think he was like, oh, maybe I don't want to give this information away. But he was remarkably open.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it was very believable.
Yeah.
Definitely in tune with what we've heard people like Chris Froome and stuff talk about. Remarkable, don't get me wrong, but they're all remarkable.
Yeah.
So I've made like pages of notes here. I was like listening to this and scribbling it all down, thinking, oh my God, yeah, that's fantastic. For me, one of the things was, are what we're doing here in our gym, we've got the gym downstairs, we've got the studio, etc. Are we on that curve, how sports science is going? I'm always looking for, are they ahead of the curve, or where are we in that sort of thing? And I was thinking, do you know what, actually, we're in the right direction here. This is what's happening. We're definitely prioritising more in our strength training and VO2 max and stuff like that. And so I was like, okay, it looks like we're on the right curve, which is, for me, was nice. What was your, like, if you had to take away one sort of vibe?
He's just like a freak. Do you know what I mean? He's just an absolute phenom of like, he's just what an insane guy. Like, the thing that struck me the most was his zone 2 power was just like, it blew my mind. It absolutely blew my mind.
In fact, actually, in the comment section, someone was there. That pause after that was me spilling my coffee into my laptop.
Yeah.
The comments is literally full of that zone 2. We'll get onto that because that's fascinating. For me, one of the big things was just how in tune with his body he is. He obviously pays attention to the science, but ultimately he trusts his own feeling more, which I thought was fantastic because he's a young rider, 26 years old, and very knowledgeable about all the science, and yet still felt that the knowledge he has personally was somehow more valuable to him. So my key takeaway, that was fascinating, especially when it came to his weight.
Yes.
Like several times he talked about his weight, and he knew where his weight would be to like the nearest 100 grams.
Yeah, it's such a massive focus for, especially like a GC rider and stuff like that for Grand Tours. Like, they have to scrimp on every gram to try and get all that performance out. And it's like, you'd expect him to know, like, he just has to be so dialed into all that sort of stuff.
So he was, the very first question was, what was your average power over that TT course?
The famous 2020 final stage overhaul from Roglic.
And he said he wanted the lightest bike. He's dead keen there to be right on the UCI limit at 6.8 kilos.
That was still when they were riding rim brakes as well. It was when he was on the V3 RS with rim brakes.
Yeah. And he was... he knew that he was exactly 66. Even all these years on, he knew he was 66 kilograms. That was fascinating. And he said that on the flat, he was doing 380 to 390 watts average. And he was pretty chill about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's that for him is like a massive negative split. Because, as he said, like, he lost quite, like, not a lot of time, but enough time on that flat section and just put the sword to everyone on that climb. That was like a generational performance, and he was like 20 years old at the time. And it's like,
hi everybody, here I am. Yeah, that was incredible.
But I think it's interesting because he was one of the last riders to switch over disc brakes. Obviously, Colnago's still offering the rim brake even now, not on the race bike, but I think we had a big thing the other week ago when they were selling their $6.5 grand C68. But he was one of the last riders to switch to disc brakes full time, because on certain stages he still wanted that extra advantage of the weight on the rim brakes. And I think, to be honest, if they still had a mainstream rim break road bike, I wouldn't be surprised if he still rode it for summit finishes, because I think he is in tune with those marginal gains and things like that. But what did interest me, though, is a little fun fact, is when he actually lost the Tour de France last year in that final time trial where he got minutes put into him by Vingegaard. He'd already lost it before that, but that was like the final nail in the coffin. Cervelo actually provided unpainted TT bikes for Vingegaard and Wout van Aert. And Pogacar was still running a painted TT bike, and the Colnago TT bike is quite heavy.
Yep.
And so there are still gains for them to be found in that sort of thing, because Cervelo took the paint off those. They were completely stripped, and there was
It's surprising actually how much weight is in paint.
Yeah.
You forget actually, but if you looked at a can of paint, it's actually
if you've got a full kilogram of paint on there, it's
well, maybe not, but like definitely a good 200 to 300, and sometimes depending. By the time you put the clear coat on and everything, if you ever scraped it all off. Who's at Danger Home actually? Have you ever seen him? He's actually done an Instagram of all the paint scrapings that he's
I think we should do a podcast one day on all of Danger Home's builds. We should rank his builds.
Oh yeah,
that'll be a good day. Anyway,
back to this. So one of the things was he doesn't spend any time on the turbo trainer. He's like, negative turbo trainer.
Rejoice, a man of my own heart.
He only liked till he'd done it when he had to be on it for doing his VO2 tests, and they definitely do a fatigue test rather than 20-minute test, which is dead interesting. So he likes specificity and practice, and I think, have you ever seen a rider who is skilled as well as incredibly fit? So he was saying that he would rather go to that place and try and practice and do repetitions. And with that repetitions, you also get the skill acquisition, I think.
I mean, that's something that I quite like doing as well, is like when I've got a specific race coming up at a local course, I'll go and knock around the course loads in the weeks coming up to it. And obviously, if you race it internationally, you can't particularly do that. But he says he likes to go and find climbs that are the same length and in sort of similar sort of distances apart and stuff like that. As well, that was pretty interesting, because I think that's probably a thing that quite a lot of people negate in training, is that actually, you've got specific intervals to do, but are you actually doing that on the same terrain, same bike, all that sort of stuff? That it's almost like muscle memory, isn't it?
It's definitely something that I never did. I was into endurance, mountain biking, adventure racing, and it's all about the distance. And if I got to a technical section, I would quite often get off and walk and just keep on with my ride. And now looking back, I wish I'd gone back and repeated it and sessioned it and practiced those climbs. I think I'd be a better rider now for it, that's for sure. I was much more keen to try and do the distance and get the time in, rather than necessarily worry about whether I could save a second on.
And I think both are important though.
They are,
because if you don't put the hours and the work in, you're never going to be fit enough to do it. But it's the same time having that repetition and really drilling down on the specifics, whether it's technical aspects in a mountain bike or...
Absolutely, but I think about the effort I put myself through to try and get fit enough to gain a few seconds, which I immediately lost from not being a technical enough rider to stay on my bike in the first place. I mean, going back to the Pogacar thing and you're seeing him descend and corner, those are vital seconds.
For sure.
They really are in skill. A skill acquisition.
And especially, I think you saw it a lot in the final Nice time trial this year at the Tour. His descent, because obviously he lives right next door to it, and it is really clear that he had done that descent 1,000 times in training. Like the way he rode that was just beautiful.
It was like he rode on a computer game without any consequences. It's like you got extra lives.
He was already won by 5 minutes, and he was still putting everything on the line just because that's just who he is and how he goes about it.
So a couple of other questions things that came up there about heat training, the big buzzword at the moment with core body temperature sensors now hitting the market. And this is where he was a little bit coy. He said, we're definitely paying attention to that. And we're doing some things. He didn't sound overly enthusiastic about it.
Well, I think partly, I reckon, because that's been a weakness of his in the past. On hot days, that's when he struggled.
And it might be a bit where he's just being a bit coy and like, I'm doing some stuff. You don't need to know about that.
Yeah.
That was interesting. And then he talked a bit about Jonas Vingegaard and where he thought the difference was between him, and he really thought that his advantage this year was in his recovery. I don't think Jonas had the opportunity of doing the amount of hours and training.
No. I mean, it's been the same for the last 2 years, isn't it? Because the year before, Pogacar had crashed beforehand and he suffered from that. And this year, Vingegaard had crashed beforehand and he suffered from that. So I think it'll be really interesting next year when we actually get fair fight between the two.
Yeah, hopefully, fingers crossed, like they'll both stay fit and well and stuff like that, and we get to see that. That would be incredible. So, youth. Pogacar considered himself old at 26 years old.
Rightly so.
So Peter asked him, what are the things you're concentrating on now? And he said, well, as I get older, I'm looking at my nutrition, my core strength, and my strength in general. And he said, as a kid, you can eat what you want and you can get away with what you want. And then you could see Peter just like going, how old are you?
Yeah.
26. And it's so interesting that even at that level of performance, at the age of 26, he's still noticing an aging effect.
Yeah.
Which was insane.
Yeah.
Terrifying.
Well, if you think about it, he was already at a really world-class level at the age of 19.
Yeah.
He's been like, for the last six years or so, he's been like really world-class. So even though he's still young, it's when some people are starting to hit that sort of level at 25, 26, it's like, you probably still start to notice the downsides.
So awesome that he's getting into his strength training. He talks a lot about that more. And his core strength, because our philosophy downstairs a little bit, if you're doing strength training properly, you are also doing core strength, because your core has to be fully engaged and active if you are doing proper strength, etc. So although we do Pilates as preparation activities, that was really cool. And also nutrition was really big, which I'm really glad, because we've now got our own nutrition classes.
Yes.
And not many gyms offer that. So we're really,
ahead of the curve.
We're talking the same things as pro athletes here, which was fascinating. Peter asked him about restricting diets. He does have chocolate.
Yeah.
It was that was good to hear that he said, I still have chocolate, because otherwise he found that if you restricted it, the cravings became stronger, and then he would just go off the rails and eat loads of chocolate.
Yeah.
So little and often.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting for me, because I'd say those are probably two things that I neglect the most in my training.
You're getting better though.
I'm getting better.
There was a time when you'd eat a whole cake.
I still would.
To yourself.
Yeah, I did eat
on a day.
I did eat a chocolate waffle before this podcast. To be totally clear,
eating a chocolate
delicious.
waffle is a massive step forward to an entire cheesecake.
But it's not something that I, especially the core strength and stuff like that. Those are two things that I could certainly improve. And it's nice to hear that. Even though, because when he was my age, he said he didn't particularly care about it, but there's still always things to be picking up and improving on, even if you are a world class athlete. So there's always things to be picking up, improving, changing, and sort of experimenting with.
Yeah, absolutely. I get it. I think when you sort of finish school, you don't really do any weight training type stuff at school, do you? And then I guess at your age, even you joining our gym downstairs, you're very conscious of being very much the youngest person in the room and stuff. So there's a really weird little gap, isn't there, until probably now Jake Atkinson has started going to the gym a lot more, because he recognises after all those big falls and tumbles,
absolutely battered.
So we've been doing some work with Jake in the gym and stuff. So maybe we'll see you in the gym sometime soon.
One day.
What will happen first? Lifting some weights or the turbo trainer?
Oh, I'd get in the gym any day before sitting on the turbo trainer.
Okay. Off season. The hydration thing. This was interesting. So he's talking about how he likes to work out his nutrition. 120 grams of carbohydrate per hour. Carb the fuck up.
Yep.
is the message. There's nothing wrong with carbs at the right time.
Yeah.
But interestingly, he only likes between 30 and 60 grams of carbs in his drink, which is similar to me. I don't like a lot of carbs in my drink. I'm almost like pure water.
Yeah.
Whereas you're like beta fuel heavy, aren't you?
Yeah, especially for racing. I struggle to eat a lot in races. It makes me feel ill if I start slamming gels and all that sort of stuff. Because I think that's where we differ. Because obviously your kind of racing, especially back in the day, was so much. It was lower intensity, but just for hours on end.
Salami, cheeses, nuts.
You couldn't live off drink for that sort of duration. But for me, I'll have like 80, 90 grams of carbohydrates in one 600 ml bottle.
Yeah. But he does most of it on gels and drink.
Yeah. I think I can do it.
But he can afford a dentist now, can't he?
Yes. Yeah. I would hope so. Yeah. I think the UAE government have got enough money to pay him for a dentist.
But Dr. Peter Attia was definitely talking about how this has changed from 5 years ago. And he was like, 5 years ago, my nutrition was all over the place. I didn't really have the nutrition company that I like with, and he would say that he'd often shit himself after a race and stuff. I mean, that comes down to hydration. You can get some real diarrhea if you get too dehydrated. And but yeah, if you're not something that you're liking to eat and drink, then you probably won't be as much.
I mean, and also the science has changed so much in the last 5 years. Like previously, it was kind of thought that 60 grams an hour was about the most you could absorb of carbs, and it's now doubled. Yeah, and it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy to think how much it's changed in such a short period of time. And just like even the little things, just like what type of gel you're eating, and the kind of like the distribution between different sugar streams and stuff like that, and how it kind of lasts through the race. It's just completely different.
I haven't seen anyone yet, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments please, but doing a study about the long-term effects of excessive carbohydrate intake. Apart from extreme diabetes.
Yes.
But hopefully if you're working that intensity, you should just go straight into energy, really.
Yeah.
Fascinating how that is all going to pan out and how they're measuring that out. Okay, next little subject that fascinating was he started talking about power meters and heart rate.
Yeah, this was the first thing that made me sort of giggle in the podcast, was how he mentioned the Shimano power meter, the infamous Shimano power meter.
And he was being very careful with his sponsors there, wasn't it? Because Peter said, "What power meter do you need? Are you on SRM?" He said, "No, I'm on Shimano."
Yeah,
and you could see the camera cut away.
Yeah.
He was very good. He just said you got to be very careful with the temperature and the calibration with Shimano.
Yes, but I think it's telling because there's also some spy shots of Filippo Ganna was actually using the Garmin power pedals at the Time Trial World Championships the other day as well. It's I think it's telling.
Yeah, and he actually had his Shimano power meter, and he'd also put the Garmin power meters on as well. Interesting. But mostly, he said, doesn't really look too much at power. And it's something that we've been talking about internally as well, about what you actually use power meter for.
Yeah.
We might get onto that later, but saying really he's been using heart rate since he was 12 years old. And he's so in tune with his heart rate and his heart rate variability that he almost knows off that, which is...
Did you hear him say what his maximum heart rate as a junior was?
Well, I think yours would be the same.
213?
Yeah.
I struggled to hit 200.
Really?
Yeah. Like that's like a really, really hard day for me, is 200.
I mean, the first time I could not hit 200 was probably only 3 years ago. I could still hit 200 3 years ago. I'm a naturally elevated heart rate, like my resting everything is sort of naturally elevated by about 10 beats a minute over what should be average for my age. But that surprises me that you've not.
Yeah, 200. And I've got a Polar heart rate monitor, so it seems to work.
Yeah,
not sponsored.
Polar H10, yeah, it's good. I'd expect you to be able to hit a 200 beats a minute still.
I did, well, for my cross race the other day, I did average 188.
No, we need to try harder. No, don't that activity at all. Henry can.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Yeah.
I mean, it might be you're just what's your resting though? What's
like mid-40s?
Okay, yeah, so you're probably like 10 beats a minute naturally below or something. So the average is pretty skewed. So yeah, that was dead interesting. We talked about his VAM. It was dead interesting. They sort of did just like, hey, what's your VAM? And it's like 7.5%. It's 1,700 to 1,800.
Again, crazy.
And they said, if you don't know what that is, so let's just talk through. So VAM, if you guys don't know, is an Italian word. I think Lance Armstrong's coach, Michael Ferrari, came up with it. And it's the average ascent speed, so how many meters per hour. I can't remember what the Italian word is for VAM, but
it roughly translates to vertical ascent meters, doesn't it? I think. That's like the British.
I think people have made that up and sort of botched it together, but it's your average ascent speed. So how many meters of climb per hour on average can you do? And I mean, I think Chris Froome was on record of having 1,800. So
Chris Froome doesn't hold a candle to this era of performance.
I think probably in terms of
if his motor's turned on, it would.
Fitness maybe, but definitely not in terms of like the overall bike handling. And
his peak was nowhere near. He's now there was an 18-year-old that took his Col del Finestra record off him in the Tour of l'Avenir 2 weeks ago. So just a bit too me. Chris Froome does not hold a candle to these guys at the minute. But in his era, he was fantastic.
It's amazing, actually, just how much science has moved on to the point that 18-year-olds are now like training, have learned those lessons and moved on and progress it. It's incredible. So TJ was very much about speed, heart rate and power and feel. And speed really is the ultimate metric. I always say that to everyone, is like, are you faster?
Yeah.
It's literally as simple as that.
Yeah,
sometimes.
Sometimes you can put out less power and go faster.
Yeah, because you've reduced your frontal area by a centimetre or something, so you're going to be faster. And that's all fitness.
Yeah.
Like fitness is not just how much power you can output, mobility and skill is fitness. So speed is always the ultimate metric on this. So that was great that he was like, really speed is what I'm after. Heart rate, I
did find interesting though, they didn't get onto he did kind of ask him about lactate very briefly, but they didn't get onto anything like lactate testing or muscle oxygen testing or glucose monitors, stuff like that. I know some things are banned for racing, but they still use them all in training. And so I would be interested to know, I don't know how open you'd be about talking about the kind of very top end of stuff that they want to keep a little bit more quiet, but I would be interested to know what other measurements they're using, because I would be surprised if you solely went off of heart rate because of how granular they are, and especially in talking about as you saying earlier, like how much your zones will change throughout the ride. Like when you fatigue, your original zone 2 power is no longer zone 2 and all that sort of stuff. And so I would be interested to know what else they're using to measure his performance.
I do definitely. There's some guidance going there. So they talked about doing the fatigue test, which is like an 8-minute ramp test, and how long he takes to do that. He said he's on the turbo trainer for about an hour and a half or something, doing the 8-minute fatigue test, and they would use that for zoning. I would imagine that they're using muscle oxygen. I'd also imagine they're taking lactate every few minutes, and then probably mirroring that against what they're getting from muscle oxygen, just to, because you always want a few bits of data that line up. Yeah. Which is why when we do a VO2 test here, we have the muscle oxygen as well, because you're looking for those turn points. And, if you just got one sensor looking for the turn point, you'll never be 100% reliable. If you've got 2 or 3 data points that all line up, so if you're taking your respiratory data, your SMO2 data and your lactate data, and they all look like they're lining up, and you've got a bit of more of a degree of confidence with those zones. So it sounds like they've done that, given him some information about your zone 2 at 340 watts.
Insane.
And he was saying that in Slovenia, he can do that for 5 hours, but where he lives in Monaco, it's really hard because you're going up and down hill.
Yeah. And that's like what we have here, isn't it? It's like you're either in zone 5 or zone 1, aren't you?
Yeah, it's really hard to stick to a consistent zone 2 where we are. So we're not the only ones that suffer that. But he was definitely in tune with when that drops. Said I can go out and do 5 hours at 340 watts for a day, but the next day I can't. I'll drop it down to 290, and that's where my zone 2 will be on day 2, which is like, pretty so in tune with his capacity.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of cementing that power is not the be-all and end-all metric, because power is a static metric for something that's constantly changing. Because, whilst 340 watts is 340 watts, if you've got 5 days in a row in the legs of really hard rides and stuff like that, you're going to have to try significantly harder to do 340 watts.
Yeah, absolutely. Even an hour later, it could be 330 watts or something.
Yeah, for sure.
It's so interesting to hear him talk about that. And then heart rate variability. Him and his girlfriend were saying that we're really in tune with heart rate variability. And I guess these metrics don't mean anything to people if you're not really tracking it, but this is the milliseconds between heartbeats. So he said, what's your heart rate variability on a good day? He said between 120 and 150 milliseconds. Now, just try and do some maths about how many milliseconds there are in a second, and then and you think, okay, I was like, what's your resting heart rate? And then he came out with his resting heart rate, the lowest he'd ever seen was 37,
which is again crazy.
But his average resting heart rate would be 43 to 42. And I go, oh, right, now your heart rate variability numbers make sense. I think mine is about 70, which is kind of okay for my age.
Yeah.
And he said the lowest, what was really interesting is the lowest he's ever had with heart rate variability was 35. End of a grand tour, etc. But he's really, really fatigued.
Yeah. And after a few drinks, I think he said as well.
Yeah. After a bit of alcohol, it really damaging my body. probably the most telling though was he knew that during the Giro, end of season, etc., racing quite hard, his average heart rate variability was still 80 to 110 milliseconds.
Again, very abnormal.
Very, very abnormal. I don't think an amateur athlete would get close to that on a rest day.
No.
Well rested. Absolutely incredible. So, one of my... the big takeaways was, how in tune with their bodies. I definitely heard athletes talk like this before, but
I don't think they're ever so open, are they?
Yeah, he was very, very open, but more to the point where it just rolled off his tongue. It wasn't like looking for stats or trying to recall numbers.
Yeah.
It's like he just knew it, which I thought was really nice, actually. Someone that just knows their body.
Yeah.
Because that's, for me, has always been the big thing with endurance. It's like the skill of endurance is translating what your body's trying to tell you into what you need to eat it and drink it, intensity. So incredible skill. I think that's it. I've got one more thing, unless you have.
One more thing. I have a gripe to bring up as well. After this completely unrelated, but...
Off-season.
Yeah.
His off-season at the moment. One, it was all like, what do you do? He said, I don't really ride a bike. I get in a gym. It's like, it's all about glute muscles, hips, and quad muscles, core training. Doesn't really ride a bike, doesn't go on the stationary trainer. He'll do a bit of running.
Yep.
I thought, okay, that's off season. Yeah, he's doing his strengths, he's doing his thing, keeping his cardiovascular going with a bit of running. Training starts mid-November.
Yeah, that's definitely a big change from the past, isn't it? It's like in previous years of pros, and like, I don't know, probably even 10 years ago, you probably have riders off the bike between November and January, not training particularly seriously.
Christmas, etc. Yeah. So.
And then you'd get back to the January training camp and have a bit of a shock in the system. But I think it just shows how dedicated they are, doesn't it? Because it's round the clock, isn't it? It's all day, every day. He's just on it.
Yeah, there's really not much of an off season at all, is there? Training starts mid-November. I was like, Jesus. He's got the World Championships in a couple of weeks, is it?
This weekend.
It's this weekend, isn't it? So this weekend, which will be October. So he gets October and a little bit of November off.
He's got more races to come after. He's still got Lombardia and stuff like that to do. So it'll be mid-October by the time he's done.
We'll reckon he gets 4 weeks. 4 weeks,
maybe less.
Oh, mental!
Such a hard life being a professional athlete, isn't it?
It is a hard life. It really, really is a hard life. 5 hours on the bike plus all your strength training. You're working an 8-hour day just in training, let alone all the media.
But you do live in Monaco.
You do live in Monaco, so we can't feel too sorry for them.
But yeah, before we go
on, what's your gripe, Jake?
This has been bothering me for the last week or so. It's the cheap Shimano brake rotors. I love them, but they've been coming out of the box bent as hell. They just rub constantly, and it's really, really annoying me. Please, Shimano, straight. I look down the camera. Please make sure the disc rotors come straight.
I wonder what's happened there.
I don't know.
Warped in.
Maybe someone's just been standing on the boxes for the distributor or something. Who knows?
Dropped them off a container ship or something.
They've managed to float their way to Milton Keynes.
I do wonder how you managed to bend a brake. It's like flattened steel, isn't it? And how do they come out of a box bent?
Yeah.
It's other than that, SRAM, we got an email to say, hey everybody, SRAM stuff is actually in stock. Bottom brackets, disc rotors.
Hey, tides are turning.
I know. Now it's winter. So I can guarantee it'll all be on sale soon.
Excellent.
And that, everybody, is the bike industry for you. And on that bombshell, time to end. Thanks for watching. Catch you on the next one.
See ya.
Cheers.